I'm almost 50, strong, clear, energized. Training hard, living clean, fully alive. But it didn't start here. 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I felt hopeless. But I chose a different path. No meds, just science, discipline, and results. Now I'm symptom-free and asking the tough questions that move us all forward. This is Hope and Health. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Hope and Health. I'm Mathew Embry. Today we're talking to Ellia Rhodes and Dr. Mikkel Anthonisen about Oceans of Hope, a sailing program that shows MS patients what's possible. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get right into it, and either one of you feel free to jump in. What exactly is Oceans of Hope?
Well, I suppose I'm the one to answer that. Oceans of Hope is an organization that I founded back in 2013, working as a senior consultant, as a doctor, MS specialist at the University Hospital Copenhagen. And having been a sailor all my life, I had this idea that when I was sitting with these people with MS and with my white coat on, trying to help them the best I could and talking to them as a person-to-person relationship, then it struck me all the time that we need to do something more than that, something that would empower and make these people who could have been me, or they could have been. It's not. It's just something. So we must do. I wanted to do something that would help people sort of recapture the strong side of themselves, and then I can come back to that, maybe how it came in, how it was catalyzed. But it was catalyzed by a patient who had built his own boat to sail around the world, and then he sat there like the Viking with a lost saga. I called him. He was a blacksmith. He built a metal steel boat, and his dreams were scattered, that he could not fulfill his childhood dream of sailing around the world. And then it burst out to me, you have to go sailing again. I'm a sailor myself. And when he left my clinic, our clinic, it just came to me, I'm going to sail around the world with people with MS as crew. And from then on, it actually went very fast. I was very focused on this needed to be done. And from 2014 in the summer, June, and 1.5 year, 2015 November, we actually sailed around the world with an active crew of people living with MS. So that was fantastic that it all fell in place. So this is Oceans of Hope, how we started. And then since then, we've been sailing every year with people with MS. So that's the long/short story of Oceans of Hope, how we started and who we are.
Ellia, you're a filmmaker. You came across this story and you chose to share it with the world. Can you tell us how you learned about Oceans of Hope and how you made your movie?
So I met Oceans of Hope. I'm at the Oceans of Hope Challenge, which is sort of the UK-based, almost sister to Oceans of Hope. Back in February 2024 at Royal Yachting Association awards ceremony, where I'd won an award, and so had a member of Oceans of Hope Challenge. And I was curious actually as to what Oceans of Hope was, what it entailed. And as we got talking, I thought, I have to make a film on this because the world needs to see what Oceans of Hope are doing and their work. And it snowballed, really. An idea snowballed very quickly. And then a couple of months later, I met Mikkel, and the ball was rolling so quickly. It flowered into an idea of I'm going to make this documentary, and I'm going to show Oceans of Hope to the world through film.
And no question. I mean, that's, from our perspective, we want to share it with many people you can. And film is an incredible medium. So did you go on the entire journey? Like, how did you decide when you were going to film, how you were going to do that, those types of logistics?
So I shot a part of my film in Scotland in May 2025 with Oceans of Hope Challenge, where I sailed around the Firth of Clyde for a week. And the second part of my film, whilst everything is intertwined, a few of the interviews were conducted with Mikkel in Denmark. So I sailed with Mikkel and a crew of Oceans of Hope sailors in August for a week. And we sailed around the smaller islands, from one of the small North Islands to the south and back up to one of the main islands in Kosor. And it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty incredible story. So, I mean, can we just get into some of the logistics? I mean, you're going to take all these people with a chronic illness all around the world sailing who potentially have mobility issues. Might be something not easy for the patient population to do. How did you start? Like, how did you recruit these patients? How did you make sure it was going to be medically safe?
When I got the idea, I've been thinking of it for quite some time until then, that I wanted to do something different. Well, I'm a medical doctor, yes, but I've also worked in South America and healthcare projects. I've taken a psychotherapist training and coaching. So I'm sort of, well, it's just due to having a lot of interest in many things maybe. But so I thought we needed to do something where we did something together. And so when I got the idea and when I went public with the idea, I was very much focused that I was actually putting a date. We're sailing 1.5 years, that date, specific date. So, and then I got a response from the MS world because this was published in the internet, and over 300 people responded that they wanted to follow me on this journey. And I tell you, Mathew, that I woke up in a sort of nightmare state of mind and with sweating, what have I done? But working hard on it and having a great network and a lot of people just carrying the load, and we got a sponsor, which was the biotech company. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention anything like that in this program, but it was very fortunate that we got a lot of money to do this. So I was able to hire in 7 people, 8 with myself, so that we could do everything safely, safety first always, and to have the logistic working all right, because we had 100 people sailing with us, crew of people with MS, because on the boat we did not have any passengers. We have only crew, and that's still working like that. On the boat we're all the same. If you have MS, well, what do I care, if you get what I mean? This is not, then you maybe have some difficulties in doing one thing or the other. We have just to consider that and make it work anyway. And we were always a skipper and 2 permanent crew on the boat, myself and another skipper taking turns, so that we could run the boat professionally. And we had 100 people from different countries, 16 different countries, taking turns, sort of passing the torch from one country to the other. It was a very big logistic work. It was really. And to make sure that it happened safely, there was always a doctor on board. If not me, then another doctor. We were so fortunate that we actually completed this global circumnavigation, with meeting all the deadlines, having no injuries whatsoever. So it was as if, I still feel it this way, that it was as if, and you may find me a little bit crazy when I say it, but I feel it was as if the universe was calling for this.
Right.
And I don't take much credit of it. Yes, I was the one initiating it, and I was running it, and I was working full time. My wife is my witness. There was always light in this office. But it was as if something hit me and took me, and then we need to do this. This is something that needs to be rectified. We need to change the perception of living, how it is to live with a chronic disease. And we need to show the world that we're in this together. And we need to show each other that this is something that we never know none of us knows what tomorrow brings, and we are not in control of all these things. So this is not about MS. This is about being a human being. So that's what have driven me all the time, and still drives me.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of respect for that point of view and that perspective, and I think that initiatives like this, and I can totally understand where you're coming from, that there's something bigger at play, and it's symbolic of something much bigger. And I'm not surprised that so many people in the MS community reached out to you online. I mean, the online MS community is very tight knit. And there are so many people who do want to get involved and do what you're talking about, changing the perception of what it means to have multiple sclerosis. What was your recruiting process? Like what did it take to get on that boat?
Well, first of all, you needed to have MS. Well, that's still the premise, which actually has a little fun twist to it, because when we sailed around the world and people came and they see this impressive boat, because it is quite impressive. It's a 21 meters, 68 feet steel boat, orange, looks very strong. It's been around the world many times. So people, they ask, what does it take to get on board this boat? And then, of course, we told them, you need to have MS Baka. And then after maybe that's not too bad after all, that you don't have MS. But you need to have MS, and then we have some medical criteria for people to participate. That you need to be able to use at least one arm. You need to have fair eyesight on at least one eye. You need to be able to sit yourself. You need to be able to somehow move around. If it takes an hour to go to your bed, fine, but you need to do it yourself. You need to be able to go to the bathroom and to take care of your personal affairs yourself. Those are the medical criteria. We had a lot of electrical scooters and walking stools and sticks and everything in the front of in the storeroom in the front. That's not a problem. On the boat, you have handles everywhere. You can't when the boat is rolling. You can't see who has MS and who hasn't. So, but it was a lot of work, Matthew, and I was I'm very grateful that I had a fantastic team of these. We were 8 people all together, and they all worked almost 24/7 for 1.5 years. So we were quite tired when we reached back to Copenhagen after circumnavigating. But it's also interesting that the people who came on board, when maybe the first couple of days, they would be some of them a little bit nervous and moving around a little bit insecure. But the whole atmosphere and the narrative, I believe too, that we are sailing around the world was so strong, and the commitment to making this an experience for life was so great that it's been the most one. I've never experienced a community like this, where people, they really rise to the occasion. And maybe you've been sailing on the boat too, Ellia. It's a very special thing, I think, and that's one of my experiences also, having worked and having lived and having been with people with MS for so many years, and having a lot of friends with this disease, that there is a wisdom to, if you allow me, there is a wisdom to contracting a disease like MS or any other chronic and serious disease. The challenge is that this wisdom is coming too soon. If you are a young, beautiful woman like Ellia, who fortunately does not have MS, but if you are and you have get this disease, or a young man, it's too early to get this premise to realize that this is actually part of life, that you do not know what tomorrow brings, and stuff like this can hit you.
Can you talk more about that, and especially about those who are diagnosed early in life and what you've seen?
Well, the wisdom is actually the one that we all need to learn, really. It's not, I'm not trying to idolize anything or romanticize anything. That would be very almost cruel of me to try to do that. But it's a fact that we get born and we die at one point, right? So far we agree, and we don't know what really is going to happen in between. we know that we're going to, I'm sorry to say, but we're going to lose everything. But we all have, of course, a notion and a hope that this will be when we're old, and that that we have possibilities and opportunities, and we can always do a lot of adventurous things if we put our minds into it. So in that perspective, we as people, as humans, live to a large extent in the future. And that's not my idea. This is psychologically well known. If we go through tough times, we can say, yeah, it's going to get better in the spring, or next year we move to France or to England, or even better to Canada, or we have all these things that we can do in the future. But if you get a disease, a diagnosis as MS, it's well known, and also to my experience, that then you sort of lose your dreams and you lose your future, and that's a very, very big loss. So one of the things that I would have liked to do is that to turn things around, to change the mindset, not in the world, also in the world, but mostly in the heads of people and in myself, that yes, this is not forever, and we do not know what tomorrow brings. We have to live our lives today, and we are all vulnerable and all worthy of being part of a strong community, and we need each other. Nobody can do anything on their own. I'm sitting here with a pen. I did not make this pen myself. I have not made anything myself. All the knowledge that I have, to the largest extent, is something that other people have provided for me. So to have this illusion that we are in as ourselves can do anything is the bare illusion that it is. And this is a wisdom that you learn in life. I'm 58. So of course you do actually get cleverer by age, I would claim. So, but if you're a young person, back to your question, and you're diagnosed with this disease, this is too much to carry. That this is something that needs to go into the phases of a regular life, where when you're old, you need to sort of recognize that this is how things are. But when you're 20 or you're 25 or you're 30, it's much too big a burden to carry on your own. And what we see is that people, they start, it activates in many people a kind of shame, because why me? And you start isolating yourself, which is very sad to see. So you need to turn it around and say that we can actually all learn by your experience. And being on a boat is a sort of mini society where we go out into sea, and everything that we have is here. The resources, also the human resources, are here. And we need each other for that. If you can participate, you participate with what you can participate with. If you have difficulties, everybody loves to help to get things working. This is how we are made as people. You can see that from infant research, psychological infant research, that we're actually born altruistic, wanting to help and wanting to give. So it's a gift to place people in a community where they need to help each other. So the person on the boat that needs the most help is actually the one who gives the meaning to the boat. This is a kind of wisdom that we need to get out or get into this, so that we can change the mindset of and not leaving people floating away into the universe, isolated in anxiety and shame and depression, and getting them back into the community where we all can learn from this and help each other to live this life that we have now, and give this beautiful blue planet forward to the children to come. So that's why, to me, Oceans of Hope is not really about MS. It's about being a human being.
I couldn't agree more with your perspective. I mean, you're on the more or less the MS Hope podcast, where we, have a global community of MS patients that, hope is number one, and changing the face of MS and sharing our stories and getting out there and doing amazing things, showing people that if you've got MS or a chronic illness, you can still live life to the fullest. And by sharing your own journey, you can help others get to a much better place. Ellia, what did you see? What kind of transformation did you see in your characters that you decided to capture?
I don't have an autoimmune disease myself. However, my mum does. And so I have a fairly good understanding of autoimmune diseases and how they affect the body. And how, a lot of people can be almost excluded or feel excluded from a lot of things due to their disease. But it was seeing people that they didn't let their disease get in the way. They just lived life to the full, sailing, doing what they loved, on board with such a supportive community of people.
Where's your film at now, and what are your plans so people all over the world can see it?
So my film now is fully, I've had the final cut, fully finished. And at the moment, I'm submitting to festivals. So just trying to spread the word of Oceans of Hope as widely as I can. So international festivals, and a lot of health documentary film festivals as well, because I feel like it's a story that more people should see.
Now, I'm going to put this question to both of you. We'll start with Ellia, because you're a filmmaker, and I'm assuming you're looking metaphorically. When you look at sailing, how does sailing mirror the MS journey?
It's a hard question. I think looking at it from sort of an outsider point of view, almost, sailing is a journey of you have to, even with dinghy or yacht sailing, you have to have a level of knowledge and skill to be able to sail to the best of your ability. And I think with MS, this is just my thought, even though you have such, a very serious disease, having a level of knowledge with MS can almost, you can't be held back. A lot of people, if they maybe don't know so much about the disease, they kind of worry perhaps about what implications doing something could have on their health or on their body. But I think connecting the two, it's a way of seeing the world at your own pace, almost, if that makes sense.
The parallel or the metaphor or the analogy that I see is the weather forecast. Together with the fact that when you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, you cannot just get out of the trouble. You need to stay in the trouble. So one day it's sunny and nice and fine weather. The next day it's stormy and rainy and cold. And maybe you get seasick, but there's no way around it. You have to stay in it. And if you have MS, it's a disease that comes for most people in attacks. And other than the attacks, it's also fluctuating in the way that many people with MS, they suffer from the fatigue, which is difficult to relate to when you don't have it. I compare it with walking the stairs. Yes, I can walk 20 20, what do you call it, stairs of cases, what do you call it when you have people in big buildings, and but you have MS, and suddenly after 6 or 7, you can't walk anymore. It's just stopped. So the point is that you don't know how the day will be, which is something that is very, very obstructing to planning for people with MS, because yes, I can plan something tomorrow, but I don't know what the weather forecast is. And when you're on the boat, it's the same thing. And when the weather is bad, you cannot just walk out of it. And maybe that's the only place, unless you climb the Mount Everest or something, where that's actually the fact. You can always, even when you see these documentaries, when they're in there alone in the wilderness, if they press the button 20 minutes later, there's an helicopter picking them up. It's not like that at the middle of the ocean. You have to stay in the trouble. So what I've experienced also when we sailed around the world and we were in the middle of the ocean in bad weather, I was very impressed the way that the people with MS, they were coping with it. And when I asked them, they said, "Yeah, I'm used to that. I'm used to my body not working, so it's just like that. It's the same thing. Probably, maybe it's better tomorrow. What does the weather forecast say?" So that's maybe the analogy to use.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. And Ellia and Mikkel, you both said something interesting I kind of want to touch on. Ellia, you said that you come from an outside perspective. And Mikkel, you talked about MS as something that I think a lot of people can relate to because we all go through those processes at one time, except for people with MS, it's an accelerated process. I've always felt that with multiple sclerosis, for some, it's just an accelerated aging process to death. We all human beings are going to go through. We're going to slowly lose our mobility, and we're slowly going to lose our faculties for most people, and we're eventually all going to die. With people with multiple sclerosis, you're more or less told that it's just going to be a quicker process. And I think that for me, that this is why telling the stories you are so important, because I believe that everybody can relate to that journey. Can each of you touch on that idea?
I think you're right, and that's what I was also saying. Well, some of the same things. If you, about the wisdom part, and yet I would also say that we know that we're going through that process as humans. We know that we're going to die. That's one of the bad things about being a human, right? That we have a knowledge about that, but we do not understand it whatsoever to any extent. I would believe it's especially not when you're young. So and we take it for granted that our body is just working, and we also maybe have a culture, and I believe that probably will have this culture that's been there forever, that we identify ourselves with the knowledge and the competences that we have to do things, because it's a survival mechanism. But it sometimes also blinds us from actually living our lives and just taking the gifts that are given to us without us having to do anything whatsoever. Actually, the most important things are given to us, like love, the nature, all these things, they're just given to us. And to me, being an intellectual, academic man with a lot of work, I get blind and I get sort of, I need to be reminded all the time to just be, and that I'm much more than what my competences and the things that I identified myself with is giving me. So the thing is that when you get MS, it's not a choice. It's something that just hits you. So there's so many things that we do not choose who we are and that we're not in control of. But what we can do where we need each other, I'm sure, is to get more and more aware of the essence of what's really important in life. What is the mean and what is the goal? What is the aim? And I believe that surrounding myself with people like yourself with MS helps me to stabilize my focus. And hopefully that I have founded and initiated and created Oceans of Hope, and now it's running with a lot of wonderful people carrying it, would be the payback from my side, my perspective, to the people who helped me get my perspective in order.
I love everything you're saying. I mean, I completely agree with your perspective on this. And, had I known about this, I would have been the first on that boat. I would have jumped on that.
Ever so welcome, Matthew. We are still sailing.
I would have been on that boat even if you said no. I would have swam behind it. But let's go back.
I love to be persuaded.
Yeah. But Ellia, let's go back to you quickly on that same idea. Were you, even though you don't have multiple sclerosis, was it really easy for you to relate to the people in the community and feel yourself part of that journey?
I think one of the biggest things for me was how much I learned about multiple sclerosis and how people deal with just day-to-day life. One day they're feeling great, and then the next they could wake up and I'm not feeling so great, I just need to have a bit of downtime. But learning so much about different people, how MS affects people in different ways. Some people have very limited eyesight, but great mobility, or the opposite way round. I think that was a real eye-opener for me, because it whilst I don't have multiple sclerosis, I felt like I could relate to people more because I understood more about how MS affected them.
Is there something that really sticks out in your mind that defines what Oceans of Hope is all about?
One story that, take one story, we were in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's a full gale, it's almost a storm. And one of the participants was at the steering wheel, and he used to sail a lot when he was younger, but he stopped sailing. But then due to Oceans of Hope, he came back sailing. And you just could see something going on in his eyes, steering this strong boat through this heavy sailing that we had. And I asked him, how are you right now? And he looked at me and said, "Today, Mikkel, I found myself again." Stories like that. We have people who have tattooed the Oceans of Hope logo on their body. We have people who have tattooed the date of their birth and underneath the date that they entered the boat. There was a story of a woman who sailed with us in Scotland, and she was standing hoisting the mainsail together with the other crew, which is a quite heavy job. And the sail was filled with wind, and the boat started to heeling over and accelerated through the waves. And this is a strong boat, Matthew. It just, crashes through the waves. And she was like, her arms in the air, like, and I had to call her and I said, "Hold on to something," because she said to me after, it was as if something in my head exploded and the whole world opened. But I had never imagined that it would be so life-changing as it has shown out to be, which also fills my heart with both joy and sorrow, because this is what happens, and sorrow because is that all it takes? Is that all it takes? We just need to invite each other, into a community and say, "I need you, I want you, we're doing this together." That's all we want from each other and need from each other. So I would hope that Oceans of Hope could be also an inspiration, not only for other organizations or charities, but also for the society and the politicians and the way we look at each other and the way we construct our societies. Imagine the resources that we can get out of each other like that.
And for you, Ellia, was there something that really stuck out for you?
I think sailing in Scotland in earlier this year, there was a man on board the boat that I was staying on who had never sailed before. It was his first time with Oceans of Hope. And he didn't know what to expect. He didn't know whether he'd like it. He didn't know whether he'd enjoy sailing. He just hopped on board, and it was almost a hope for the best. And he was like a new person when he stepped off the boat. It was unbelievable to see, because he wasn't reserved, but he was a little more insular at first. And then throughout the week, he became more and more extroverted. And it was like he was a different person. Then he took the wheel. And it was, like Mikkel said, as if he found himself again.
I think that's really important. And I know, Ellia, you have a background in sailing as well. And so and sailing is not easy. I mean, it's a challenging activity, sport, however you want to see it. It can be dangerous. There's risks, all this type of thing. If you don't have MS and you're just anyone living on this planet, how important is it for people to choose to do activities like this, to put themselves willingly in difficult situations with groups of people?
I think with sailing, whether you're dinghy sailing or yacht sailing, I think specifically when a challenge hits, more so with yacht sailing, you have to think about things very quickly in a very short space of time. And it can be a matter of life or death, especially when you're sort of sailing, circumnavigating. And you learn so many things about yourself whilst you're sailing. And you learn a lot whilst you're sailing dinghies, but also the mental well-being aspect. A lot of people don't realize what a positive impact sailing has. You know, just being on the water is the most positive thing. And I think a lot of people don't realize how impactful that is.
And Matthew, the things you mentioned before about sailing, you could actually say exactly the same things about life, couldn't you? That, you have to apply yourself and you have to work for it. And and sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed. One of the things that I realized, I'm very grateful that I realized as a very young man, is that I had a longing for doing a lot of things, and a lot of the things that I wanted to do, I was actually afraid of. If I wouldn't have been afraid of it, I would have been stupid. But I decided that I would love through the fear, which is something that I tell myself still, that I would insist on living my life, even though I might fail, and even though could be dangerous. But you cannot sit on your hands until death appears, can you? We need to get out there and take each other with us. And this is a wonderful thing that we've got this life. We do not know what's going to happen to us. So I see MS is a neurological disease, yes. But it's more than that. It's also an existential disease that tells everybody that we do not know what tomorrow brings, but we have this life, we need to live it, and we need to do it together.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is how I live my life. I mean, I think I think you've nailed it. And I love that this message is getting out there, because I think, the more we share this, we're amplifying everybody's life to realize
Exactly.
that we only have today, and let's get after it and do the things that are gonna, what you said, open up our world, feel alive again, feel a rebirth through any kind of adventure or something we sign up for to overcome. Now, you said also a really important word in the MS community, fear. I know that a lot of people with multiple sclerosis live in fear. It's such an unknown disease. Did you witness people conquering and overcoming fear in this journey?
All the time. It's like, I see also one of the things that the culture or the atmosphere, that we have on the boat, have this metaphor of it's the hug of the mother. And even though I'm a father and a man, I can give the hug of a mother, believe me. Where you listen to each other with the sorrow and the pain and the difficulties that we feel, but then also the hand in the back of the father. Okay, now you go up there and you do this. If you fail, fine. Well, we all fail. There's one thing that I also tell my crew, also the young crew that do not have any diagnosis. If I wanted to go out on a foredeck and do something and they say, I'll try to do my best, I stop them. Come back, please. And I want you to say something. I'm very kind when I say this to them. I would like you to say out loud, I'm going on the foredeck and I'm going to do it. That's another way of saying things. And then I ask them, how do you feel inside when you say it like that? Much better. Instead of saying, okay, I'll see what I can do. I'll try my best. it makes you already, you already have the fear when you say that. No, go up there and say, I'm going to do it. I know as an old captain that maybe you fail, but I'm not going to hit on you when you fail. We all fail. Tell yourself, I'm going to do it. And it's going to change something inside of you, whether you have MS or do not have MS. So there's a point in how you love through the fear, and you're not afraid of the failure, but you do apply yourself to the best you can, and knowing that you might not succeed. Fine. So what?
Absolutely fantastic. I have just one last question. If people want to see the film, Ellia, how do they see it?
So at the moment it's on YouTube. So it's streaming through my channel, but I'm hoping at some point to potentially extend what is now a short film, potentially into a feature length. And it's a dream almost for it to hit a distribution platform. Fingers crossed one day.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining with us today. The work you're doing is exceptional. I applaud you. A huge inspiration to me and to the community. Keep going, and we're going to do our best to lift up your message of hope.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. And Ellia, thank you for making the film.
And thank you, Mikkel. And thank you, Mathew.
Thanks for joining us. Hope and Health is made possible through generous donations. To learn more or support the show, visit mshope.com, where you'll find free science-based resources.